got it.
Okay.
All right. And then, like I said, I will do a intro, and yeah, we'll jump right into it.
Sounds great.
Cool. Let me jump right here. Boom. Stream. All right. Awesome. So if you're ready to go, I'll do the intro.
Sounds great.
Cool. All right. Cool. Recording. Yep. Cool. All right. We're all good. All right. Welcome everybody to another live and amplified. Dang it. All right. Got it. All right. Welcome everybody to another live and amplified livecast. I'm your host, Tom Quiet, and we are back at it again with another amazing podcast. Today we have a very special guest. We have Robbie Harte. How's it going today?
I'm doing great, thank you. How are you doing?
Doing well. We're going through like crazy heat right now, and the Texas power grid is doing crazy things, but we're surviving. That's all I can ask for at this point.
Oh my goodness, well, I'm sending you cool vibes.
Being up on the East Coast, I'm sure during the summer I know it gets hot up on the East Coast, but right now it's just, yeah.
It's not quite as hot. It is humid, but it's not quite that hot yet. So
Gotcha. Yeah, for sure. So excited to have you on. We've been talking for a little bit on Instagram. You know, we've had you on we've played some of your music on the Hoedown Showdown through the last few weeks, and just kind of getting that opportunity to do that. And now we have the podcast set up with you. It's really excited to sit down and chat with you.
Well, thank you so much for having me on, and I really appreciate your support. Thank you for spinning my tunes. Thank you for sharing my story and for having me on tonight.
Yeah, for sure. So you're originally from Montreal, but now you reside in New York, correct?
Yes, that's true. There's a song there.
Oh, so what was it like growing up in Montreal?
You know what? It was really cool because I really got to experience so much living there. I didn't realize how much I got to experience living there until I moved away. And I'm a really big fan of food, so the cuisine there is amazing. And I really do miss that. I do miss my family who's still in Canada, but Canada just has its very uniqueness, you know, its very own uniqueness. And I just feel like there's such a European influence in Montreal, where I'm from. And it's really special. It's beautiful, it's special, it's different. And I enjoyed growing up there. I had nothing against Quebec or Canada, but I moved here for love. So
For sure.
my heart brought me to New York.
Awesome. And so growing up in Montreal, what's the music scene kind of like there from throughout the years from your experiences?
You know, when I was growing up and I was in high school and even in some college years, I was into more rock and like punk and new wave and a really different kind of music. I mean, I listened to country also, but I was very big in the local scene, if you will. And there's a lot of really great music coming out of Montreal. You know, I think that there's a lot of indie. There's a lot of really cool indie music, and that was really cool. And there's also some really cool French indie music, which is also really cool. If you're not used to hearing that, I you know, it was an exciting experience to be able to experience that. But as I grew older, you know, I got to recognize what a great music scene there was. Of course, coming out to the US, I obviously experienced it at a much bigger scale because it's so much larger here and there's so much musical diversity here, which is incredible. There's my dog and he agrees. He says the music here is awesome. That's what he's saying. But it was exciting to experience that growing up.
Yeah. Growing up in Montreal, or having lived in Montreal most of your entire life until you moved to New York, was there much of a cultural difference? Because I know what is it, like 3, maybe 4 hours apart from each other?
So actually, it's funny because people always say to me, you know, I immigrated to the US, right? I moved here to get married for love. And when I tell people that I'm an immigrant, they would say, but you look American. And I get that a lot, right? Because our cultures are very similar and there's so many similarities being part of North America, but there's so many differences. And you recognize it when you're away from home. You know, you start to notice it. Something as simple as food brands, companies that the food you're familiar with. You go to store, buy a can of tomatoes, and you're like, I don't see any brands I recognize, or like anything. It could be anything, and it's just being homesick from missing things that you're used to seeing. And even though it's so similar and the products are very, very close, they're not quite what you're used to. So there is a little bit of a cultural difference. I do say that in Montreal, the food was incredible. There's so much cultural diversity, and there's so much like, I could go where I used to live, and there would be an Indian restaurant, a Thai restaurant, an Italian restaurant, like all next to each other. Like you could literally go from restaurant to restaurant and experience the best of what the world has to offer. It was just amazing to be able to have that opportunity. And I really enjoyed that. We have that here on a much smaller scale, and there's a lot of really great restaurants here, but I do miss the food back home. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's just common with anybody that moves away from home, whether you leave the country or not. You've got your local cuisine that you're used to and that you enjoy.
I was thinking too, because you were asking me about the culture being different. Even if you go from Quebec to Toronto to Ontario, even though it's the same country, it's different. It's the same thing as me being in New York and you being in Texas. We have different things that we're used to, even though we're part of the same country. So I think it just depends on what you're used to, and getting used to something new is there's always a learning curve, and you usually have to go through like 12 products before you find the one that you like. But you can make anything work. So it comes to be adaptable, and you learn what you like, and you find new things that are similar to what you had back home. And I found fries that are almost the same as back home, not quite, but almost. And that was a big thing. So
nice. Yeah, I had somebody on, they were from Toronto. They were living in Toronto. I think that's where they were from too. And they got me, I had asked them, I was watching a video where they were doing like comparisons about Canadian food versus like Canadian specialties versus American specialties, and poutine came up in this video. And I literally just watched the video before we jumped on the podcast, and I asked her, and I was like, hey, what is this? And she's like, oh my God, it's amazing. And she broke it down, and I was like, okay, whenever I go to Canada, I'm gonna have to try that, because it only sounds like something that I can get good in Canada. So
it's funny you say that, because it was very big in Quebec, and it still is. But I'm saying when I was growing up, that was really, really popular. And then as I moved to the US, I started to see it on menus in America. And I'm like, that's so odd to me. Just like seeing it Tim Hortons locally. I'm like, that's wrong. That's Canada. But it is really interesting. It's a very interesting flavor. It's actually really, really cool, but it works. It really works. If you like cheese and you like barbecue sauce and fries, you're in business. That's awesome stuff.
That's actually, not so much the cheese, but the barbecue sauce. That's how I eat a lot of my French fries anyways, because I don't keep ketchup. Usually in America, it's you eat your fries with ketchup. And I was just like, one day I just started eating it with barbecue sauce, and so.
Well, I'm sure you'll really enjoy it. It's really great.
Yeah. I've made one trip to Canada when I was a kid. And basically my dad, so I'm originally from Chicago. That's where I grew up. I lived there for 22 years. And when I was in high school, my dad was working in Detroit. And so he would travel he's a pilot. So it's not like every day he was driving to Detroit. It was like maybe once a week, or, like whatever it was. And so one day he had like an extended layover in Detroit, and he's like, hey, come up, hang out, and we'll go do Detroit things. I was like, I don't know what there is to do in Detroit, but anyways, so he's like, and this was pre 9/11, so you didn't need like passport, like the border was a lot more chilled out at that point. And so we went across to Canada in Windsor.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, now you can tell all your friends you were in Canada. I was like, Dad, this is like Detroit. Like, what are we doing here? Like, there wasn't anything culturally different. It was just like a little stopover town. And I'm like, okay, cool. But looking back at it, it's like, yeah, we were in Canada, but not really. Like, if that makes sense.
familiar. It felt like you knew where you were. It felt like it was just like you said, you stepped out to another town, not far
Yep.
from where you.
Yep. 100%. So, growing up, how does music kind of come into your life? How does who was like your influence growing up with music?
Oh goodness. Well, there's a lot there. I was singing before I was talking, like many singers. I was speaking when I was singing before I was speaking. I
Mhm.
was singing, I think, at 1 years old in my stroller. Um, my mom used to sing show tunes and did shows, so I must have adopted my love of singing from her and inherited it from her. Um, I loved singing. I sang my way through everything throughout my whole life. It was always what I wanted to do. I loved so many voices. I loved Celine Dion. I loved Shania Twain. I love Martina McBride. I love Juice Newton was one of my very favorite voices. And my absolute all-time favorite was Roy Orbison. You know, he was my love from growing up when I was a really small child up until now. And he stayed with me all these years, you know.
Nice. Oh, and so kind of you say, or you'd mentioned that you started singing really before you could talk. At what point did that light switch kind of happen where it's like, oh, hey, singing something I can do and I should follow?
You know, I sang ever since I was a baby, and I
Hmm.
don't think I stopped. It was just always how I expressed myself. I didn't have a big circle of friends. I mean, music was my friend. Music was who I told everything to, you know, good days, bad days, exciting, sad, everything. I just took it out to music and we just sang it out together. And that was my way of expressing myself my whole life. When I was 15, I wanted to go to a singing school, like a music school, like Fame. And I auditioned for a school and I got accepted and I was majoring in voice and that's what I wanted to do. I loved singing and I just really, music was my passion. It really was everything. It was how I expressed myself. And it was just how I went through life's highs and lows. And as I grew up and I got a little older, I said, you know what? I have responsibilities now. I'm always going to pursue this dream to sing, but I wanted to wait till my life got a little more settled and, you know, I had adult responsibilities, a job, and I just couldn't stop doing what I was doing to have a career in music. But it was always my dream to sing. I always wanted to be a professional singer. So in 2007, I moved to New York to marry my husband. We actually had met in Hawaii at Starbucks. I was actually supposed to go to Paris, and at the last minute, I changed my mind and I went to Hawaii. I ended up meeting my husband at Starbucks in Hawaii at 6 o'clock in the morning. And we ended up dating and had a long distance love affair. And that was it. I moved to New York and we got married. And so in 2007, and unfortunately, about a year later, I was pregnant with my daughter. I got badly injured and I lost my ability to sing as a result of my injury and just being in severe chronic pain.
Mhm.
So I actually couldn't sing anymore. And it was the first time in my life that my voice had failed me because I always thought I was going to be able to sing and there was always going to be time for that. And I was always going to have a chance to go after that dream. And, you know, for the first time in my life, it was taken off the table and I really couldn't believe it. It was unbelievable to me. So for years, I couldn't sing and it was just devastating. It was lonely, it was devastating, and I couldn't express myself, even though this was the worst time of my life. I couldn't sing it out. And when my daughter was about 2.5, she was diagnosed with autism. And when she was a little older, she was about 7 years old, we sat her down and we told her, you have autism. There's absolutely nothing wrong with autism. You could be anything, you can do anything despite whatever is different about you. It might make certain things more challenging for you, but you can be anything, you can do anything. You know, the world is yours. And as I was telling her this, I realized I was at home, curled up in a ball in pain and not following my dream. And I
Mhm.
said, you know, I have to really change that because I can't tell her one thing and then show her something else, you know, because all she sees is me at home in pain and not really doing anything. And I said, I can't have that. She needs to see me going out there and following my dream. And even if it's hard, even if I stumble, even if I have to get back up, even if doors get slammed in my face, I needed her to see what it was like for me to go out there and chase my dream. So I can tell her, you can do the same thing. You can go out there anything and you can do anything. And so that's what I did. That was the moment that really inspired me to go out there and follow my dream. And I haven't looked back ever since.
Yeah. The
That was
real interesting thing there is that you kind of understood that kids pay attention to more what their parents do than what their parents say.
absolutely. And my daughter is really smart, and she's smart enough to know that if I'm telling her one thing and I'm not doing it, that it's not really what I mean, right?
Yeah.
She's smart. Know
Yeah.
that. I realized that if I'm telling her, honey, it's not that hard, you can do it, then why am I not doing it?
Yeah.
Right. So I realized there was a lot of responsibility of doing the right thing by her and by showing her by example. And I just really wanted to be the best possible role model for her. I wanted her to be proud of me. You know, she didn't know what I used to be like before. She didn't know the kind of person I was. I was fierce. I was unstoppable. I did amazing things. And she never knew that because she only saw me after I got hurt. So she never knew the person that I was before. And I never wanted her to think that the way she saw me was the way that I was. And that was all I ever was, because that wasn't me. It wasn't really a reflection of who I was. And I didn't want her to think that. I wanted her, yeah, I wanted her to see me the way that I see her, you know, as being so incredible. And she's so brave, and she goes out every single day and she faces things no matter how difficult they are.
Yeah. That's, I mean, like, it's having had that realization that they pay attention to what you're doing and being like, okay, I need to change my attitude or my kids gonna fall into the same pattern because
Right.
they're paying attention. That's, yeah, I mean, that's all I can say. I'm speechless about it.
Thank you. It's really incredible, if I may. We're on this journey together, you know. I cheer for her and everything she does, and I'm her biggest supporter, and she cheers for me. And we're both out there living our best lives, doing everything that we dream of doing, you know, without hesitation. And we cheer each other on. And, you know, everybody has good days and bad days, and we're there to lift each other up and to support each other and really just to be proud of one another. And I couldn't be more proud of her.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, so 2007 is when you moved to New York, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then 2008, you were pregnant with your daughter. Um, at when did you kind of start having these realizations that you're telling your daughter one thing, but you're not doing it, so you need to start rechasing your musical dreams?
I want to say that was like, so my math isn't that good right now. It had to be around 2016
Okay.
because, excuse me, because I lost my ability to sing. I couldn't sing anymore. And
Mhm.
it was devastating. You know, it was just so painful. It was
Mm.
painful for me to even accept the fact that my dream was off the table. And it was a very difficult time for me. And besides my pain, you know, I just moved to a new country. I didn't know anybody. I hadn't had a chance to make friends or to make a network of people. And it was really very isolating. And
Mhm.
music would have been the amazing bridge, right, to carry
Mhm.
me through, bring me back out, and to connect me with a community and all those things. But unfortunately, I didn't have that at the time. And but it was around 2017 and 2000, the late 2016. And then I decided that I was going to do it. Like okay, so when I told my daughter she had autism,
Mhm.
I'm a very glass half full kind of person. I
Mhm.
really don't focus on negative. I always look at the positive of something. So when she was diagnosed, I went and I looked up all of the people famous in history who had autism. And what I did was I didn't tell her, you know, this is something that you have. I said, you're going to be in the company of all these amazing people who've
Mm.
overcome what they have and succeeded. You know, not that it's held you back. It's, you know, you're going to be in the company of all these incredible people. You know,
Mhm.
there's scientists, there's musicians, there's composers, there's Miss America, there's actors, and you know, there's all kinds of people in the world that have autism and that have done incredible things. And you're going to be one of those people who do whatever you want to do, but you can do anything, and you're without limits. And so I really wanted her to understand that, and that was really important for me. Um, when I told her that and I showed her that, I feel like I empowered her.
Mhm.
And by empowering her, I also felt very empowered because I said to myself, you know, for years, I said, you know, I'm broken.
Mm.
You know, I walk with a cane, you know, I'm older, I'm starting my career later on at life, you know, and I have all these obstacles. And I'm thinking, I have all these things to overcome. And I just said, you know what? I don't care. I don't care who's going to tell me that, okay, well, you can't come because you have a limp, or that you walk with a cane, or if I get on stage and I'm afraid to fall, I'll hold on to the curtain, or I'll hold on to the mic stand, or
Yeah.
I'll hold on to the drummer. I don't care. I'm just kidding. But there's always a way around something. And they say when there's a will and there's a way. And you find a way. You find a way to do what you need to do, because the desire is so strong, right? You just really want to get out there and do it. And that's what I wanted to do so badly. And
Yeah.
I'm so glad that, everything that I was worried about, never even came out into play, except for one person who said to me, "Oh, I didn't know you had a cane." And I'm like, okay, that's okay. But most people don't even notice. They don't say anything to me. Some people think I'm holding a guitar. They don't even realize that it's a cane. And I'm okay with that. It's part of who I am, and I'm not embarrassed by it anymore. I feel like it's a symbol of strength, and the fact that I've overcome everything that I have, despite everything I've gone through. For me, it's more like, you know what? So that I have this, but I've done that, and I don't think of that anymore. But at the time, just starting out in music, this business is ageist. It's, there's so many things in the music industry. They're so heavily focused on your appearance and your age and, all of those things. And that was a big concern, but now I don't even care. I'm just very excited to be able to do what I love, and to be able to sing and write music and just get to share my music with the world.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Just to kind of piggyback off of that. So a lot of people that follow Live and Amplified don't know, because they see this much of me on a daily basis. I have a cerebral palsy. So it's not like an extreme case. I'm still pretty mobile, but before we jumped on here, I told you about the knee injury that I had. I was very concerned that was gonna put me out of for injuring your knee is bad for just anybody, but for
Yes.
me, it's like extremely bad, because it happened to my good knee
Oh
and
my
not
goodness.
my bad knee. Like my left knee is already pretty jacked up from high school when I was like a little bit more active. I have no cart, like all this stuff. And it happened to my good knee, and I thought I was gonna be done. Like I just figured, okay, I'm going into a wheelchair. This is my life now. And then uh my dad kept telling me, okay, well, he kept trying to get me to move to Florida, because he needed to take care of me. And I was just like, no, I moved out here on my own. I'm going to not live with the consequences, but I'm going to make it work. I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to follow my dreams. I'm going to follow my passions. And once I kind of had that moment with him and I told him, he was like, okay, that's all I've ever wanted you to do. Because, he was always kind of the one to um, tell me to chase my dreams, but he also wanted to kind of ground you into reality a little bit. Like, okay, you can chase your dreams, but figure out how you're going to, he wanted you to think it out,
You want
essentially.
to
Just,
be realistic about it. I
yeah,
understand.
like, go chase your dreams, but figure out how you're going to make money or make a living,
Right.
or whatever. And my mother, before she passed away, she was always the more conservative one. Like, well, go make sure you have a job, make sure, just like work on this on the side, and don't put too much money into it, just all this stuff. And then one day I had gotten her to, like, just before she passed away, she was like, I completely understand what you're doing now. Like, it was like 3 or 4 months before she had passed away. She was dealing with cancer. So she kind of had this realization, and she just told me one day, she's like, look, keep it going. You're doing the right thing. And then, a couple of years passed by, and then I do my knee injury, and all these things that my dad had been warning me about. He's like, you're not going to be able to get along by yourself for too much longer, because you're 35, 36. You're only getting older. At some point, you're going to need help. And then my knee injury happens, and I'm like, dang it. But then luckily, I just was able to make it through, and I just put my foot down and said, nope, I'm not doing it. I'm not moving. I'm staying. And here I am.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for sharing all of that, because I found that so inspirational. I find you very inspiring, and I'm so grateful to hear your story, because I know that you're sharing my story, but I'm happy that you had a chance to share a little bit about yourself. And I think that you're so blessed to be able to do what you love, and I'm so proud of you for trekking through it. I know it's hard, and I know that as a parent, we want to be concerned for our children and make sure that they're okay, and we want to make sure that they're responsible. But I'm so glad your mom gave you the gift of understanding what you do and seeing what you do from your point of view, and saying that's a gift, that she gets what you're doing or got what you're doing, because you'll always be able to have that with you. And it's almost with you when you're doing what you're doing. And I just think that's beautiful. So I'm happy you got to have that. And really, I'm very proud of you for everything that you've overcome. I know, as somebody who's overcome injuries and things like that, difficulties, it can be so difficult, and it can be devastating, because it literally, like, you determined your life even despite everything you had going on. Then you got hurt, so you had to take it back, and and you're so determined not to let it stop you. That's just incredible.
Yeah, it's
Out of you. That's amazing, and thank you for sharing your story.
yeah, for sure. It's just one of those things where having you share your story, I just wanted to put that little bit more emphasis out there, because I know there's a lot of kids that want to be musicians, or want to be, we'll just say, creatives in general, because I'm not a musician. I can't play a note to save my life. Right. I'm 100% honest about it. I know that for a fact. I wanted to be a musician. I tried it in 4th grade, and it didn't work out. I just didn't have the patience to practice. I didn't have I just it didn't mesh. I didn't understand any of it. But I did find my creative outlet, and it's led me to this, telling other people's stories, holding the podcast, making videos, all that fun stuff. So just being able to share my story, because I don't like talking about myself. I'll be 100% honest. It's not something I enjoy doing, but when the time's right, and
Absolutely.
it just felt right. So,
Well, again, thank you for sharing. And I just want to reiterate, my whole last few years, one of the things that stopped me from trying to go out there and sing and follow my dreams was, I'm not in my best shape. I'm older than I've ever been. And now, because I had a recent injury, I'm not in the physical shape that I used to be in.
mhm,
And you would think that all of those things would stop me from having
mhm,
success, but I'm actually more successful now than I've ever been. So, anybody out there who's saying, well, I'm too old, I'm too broken, I'm too, heavy, or I'm too
mhm,
not in shape, or I'm not perfect, or none of those things really matter. If you're really in it for the right reasons, the people who need your music will find you. And I just say, go out there and live your dream. And whatever it is, if it's not music, if it's art, if it's a sport, whatever it is, go out there and do what you love. You'll be so proud of yourself for going out there and doing it.
yeah, 100%. So you'd met, or about 2016, 2017, in that ballpark is when you kind of started revisiting and kind of getting back into the music scene. And then you started releasing music in 2018, according to Spotify. I don't know how accurate that is, but
Yeah, about right. That's about right. So the first studio that I was working with, I was taking voice lessons just to get myself back out there. So when I declared to the world that I was going to go out there and sing, I had to have a plan.
yeah,
It wasn't enough just to say, hey, I'm going to follow my dreams, right? I had to
fair.
put in the work. So I started taking voice lessons to get back into it and get my voice back and my stamina back. And then I released my first single, original single. It was called Don't Count Me Out Just Yet. And the
Mm,
song really telling the world that I might be down, but I'm not out. So don't count me out just yet. I might not look the way I used to. I might not act the way I used to, but I still have so much to give. I'm not
mm,
done. And the end of the song, the last line was, I haven't left my mark just yet. And I wanted the world to know that just because I was paused for a long time, don't count me out. I'm coming back, and I'm gonna make my mark. And so that was my first single, my original single, and that was about 2018. And then I followed it up with a few other original singles. I
Mm.
released my song "Life Is Better," which I wrote about my daughter with autism and how she makes the world a better place just by being her. And I wanted to celebrate her and her uniqueness and just how incredible she is, and at the time it was, but
Mm.
how joyful she made my life and just how happy she made me. And, people always associate autism with negative, right? Oh, your daughter has autism. I'm sorry. I'm like, why are you sorry? My daughter's amazing.
Yeah.
She lights up every single room she walks into. She's such a loving child. And she's so great. She cares about the whole world and wants to make everything better. So, I wanted to celebrate that. I wanted to write an amazing song about her. And then I wrote another song about her called "Find a Way." And then I did release a couple of holiday covers. And then I want to say in January 2020, I wrote a song called "Can't Stop Thinking of You." And that came out in January of 2020, right before the pandemic.
Yeah.
And
this was in New York. Didn't the pandemic kind of hit New York like sooner than a lot of the places?
You know what? It was it hit pretty hard and pretty fast.
Yeah.
So there's a funny story there. Well, it's not really funny, but there is a story there. So I had released single, and I had spoken to my producer at the time, and we talked about me putting out an EP. And I had done so many singles, and I wanted to release songs as an EP, as a body of work, because these songs were stories based on things that I had lived through, and there were stories I'd never told anybody. So I was gonna name the EP Untold Stories. And the EP was supposed to come out at the end of March, the beginning of April. So it was at the very last song, recording the very last song, and it was like almost finished the very last song. And then of course the pandemic hit, and what do you know? Indefinitely the studio was closed.
Yeah.
So here I had this project that I had been working on for a long time, and I was getting ready to put it out, and I couldn't put it out indefinitely.
Yeah.
And originally I felt really sad about it. I was like, oh my gosh, because I'm the type of person, I don't know about other artists listening, but if I write a song and I record it, I want to put it out right away. I don't want to wait. I just want to share it. It's hard to hold on to it, let me tell you.
Yeah.
But this time I had gathered all these singles, and I was going to make an EP, and I was going to put it out. And then of course, God had other plans. So maybe a month or so in, I started working with a music mentor, and I presented some of my songs and discovered that there was a better way of telling some of these stories. So I went to the drawing board, and I actually ended up rewriting some of the songs on that EP, and then I re-recorded them. So I ended up taking that whole time that was during the pandemic, and I just looked at everything through a different lens, and I realized it was actually a big blessing, because had I released the EP the way it was, I wouldn't have been happy with it. And not because of the sound or the production, just because I wasn't telling the story the way I would have been happy with. And it just wasn't doing me justice to tell the story the way that I was telling it. So I went back to the drawing board, I rewrote some of those songs, and I just really came back with a completely different lens, different view. And, living through the pandemic also changed the way that I see things. It altered my perception of things, and I just saw things a little bit differently. And I think all of that had an impact on the way that I wrote going forward. So I ended up putting everything to re-recording the songs, putting it back together, but this time I came out with an EP called "Eye of the Storm." So I actually ended up changing the title from Untold Stories to "Eye of the Storm," because during this process of writing and releasing this EP and re-recording it, I discovered my strength, and I discovered, that no matter what's going on around me, all the craziness, I have my ground, my center, and I know who I am. And I've discovered that during this process. So it was a really incredibly empowering process. And it was just amazing to be able to experience that. So this EP came out in December of 2020. And some of my favorite stories are on here. These are all true stories, things that I've lived through that I've put into songs. And one of them, incidentally, was the song I told you about earlier, where I met my husband in Starbucks in Hawaii. And I wrote a song called "Out of the Blue" about how I ended up trading Paris for paradise, and I ended up meeting my husband out of the blue at Starbucks. And my song 17 speaks to the trip that I took from the north to the south, relocating, starting my life and our life throughout the years. So there's some really nice stories on there, and some happy stories, some sad stories, but they're all from a point of view of empowerment and strength.
Yeah. Awesome. That's really, it's, just it's interesting how the pandemic just kind of changed everything for a lot of people. And, for some people in not such a good way, but for you, musically speaking, it gave your music a chance to, I don't want to say the word mature because that doesn't sound accurate.
You're right.
Is
It's the right word. It's the right word. Absolutely. I'm going to be the first one to say that that's accurate.
Yeah, because mature to me, it's a word that I just kind of throw around when I don't know how to describe it, but sometimes it works. So, kind of taking the momentum from that project into the rest leading up to now, because like 2022, you had a really busy year. 2023, and leading up to your new single that released the end of May, right? Yeah, end of May, I think. Yeah. Um, yeah, how did going through that process of having an idea for one project, reevaluating it, and then coming out with something that resonated with you even more, how did that kind of affect your music moving forward? Were you more confident in your music at that point because you had gone through that maturation, the mature, whatever that word is you want to call it? You'd
Well, I
gone through
think,
that. Go
yeah,
ahead.
I think you nailed it though. I mean, I'm not offended by the word mature, maturing,
Yeah.
because I that as artists and as humans, we always mature as we go through things. We take the lesson and it makes us stronger or better or more empowered or more prepared for the next thing that happens. So, I don't find that offensive at all. I think that when I first started writing, I was writing more in a journal-like fashion,
Mhm.
things very raw and very open, and and that was part of my signature, is that I would write things that were very heartfelt and very raw, and people
Mhm.
could associate themselves in my songs very easily. And that was very early on for me, was songwriting. And then as my style matured
Mhm.
and improved, it also, I ended up finding myself, and I found my voice. I found my lens. I found the lens that I look through now when I'm writing. And that came with experience, that came with maturity, that came with trusting myself, trusting my experiences, and really being able to look at something, a negative experience, let's just say a very sad experience, and telling the story not in a sad way, in a beautiful way, and taking pain and turning it into something beautiful and empowering. And I've learned how to do that. So I'm very proud of the entire process and the entire journey, because had I not experienced it, I probably wouldn't have gotten to the point where I was able to see something, to have gone through something painful and turn it into something positive.
Yeah, completely understood.
See,
And
my dog is very supportive. He agrees once again. And it's just part of the process. I think it's very important. I know for myself as an artist, I want to grow as I'm writing, as I'm experiencing, as I'm putting out songs. I want to grow. I want things to improve and get better. I don't want to stay exactly the same. So
gotcha.
I think the process is very important, to take the lessons and to apply them where you can.
For sure. For sure. He sounds like a very big dog.
He is. He's probably bigger than I am, though. He's about almost 100 pounds.
Oh
Yeah.
wow.
He's
I
a
could just tell him to
cat.
bark. I was like, that sounds like a very big dog. So
It's so funny. He's adorable. He's so cute. He was sitting by my feet before while you were talking, and he was listening to you.
oh. And then he ran away and started barking.
Well, I think he had a plans. I think he heard something downstairs. So
Gotcha. Fair enough. Fair enough. Um, so let's talk about Sticks and Stones here for a quick second, just so people kind of know where you're coming from with this one. What's the story behind Sticks and Stones?
well, like all my other songs, it's a true story. It's based on a real experience. It was inspired by a negative and toxic relationship I
Mm.
experienced. And it really is about me taking this negative and toxic experience and turning it into something positive and empowering, and really something beautiful. I took this fire that lit a spark and I just set it on fire, and I literally turned it into something that people are gravitating to, and it's something that's catching fire with everybody. So I'm really proud of it. I think often in relationships, people can be very negative and try to say mean things about us, or say bad things and try to take you down. And I've learned that you can say anything, but sometimes it's best just not to say anything back at all. Not to respond to them, not to to beat them, because they say you can't argue with a fool, and
Yeah.
you can't argue with somebody who just doesn't understand. So sometimes the best thing to do is to walk away and you know and write a song. I guess writing a song. But I took this very negative experience that I went through, and I turned it into an empowerment anthem.
Yeah.
And it turns out that a lot of people have gone through something similar. So, I'm very sad to know that they've gone through something similar, but it's great to know that it's resonating with people and that they really love this message.
Yeah, for sure. I to piggyback off what you're saying or a little bit ago, I often say you can't stop stupid. Like
My
it,
husband says that all the time.
it's so simple, but it's so true. It's just like, yeah. So
Yes.
oh, so with the with Sticks and Stones, are you? I mean, 2022, you also released a whole bunch of singles. Are you ultimately building towards another full length project, whether it be an EP, LP, whatever it is, or are you kind of entrenched in just releasing single project or singles right now?
It's kind of a loaded question. My year didn't finish out the way that I had hoped
Mm,
last year. I was involved in a bad car accident in November, and I took the last 5 to 6 months off. I didn't
mm,
really do too much with music until this release now. Um, I had to take some time to heal and
mm.
work on my recovery. And so I didn't get as much out as much as I would have liked to.
Yeah,
I was record as many songs as I wanted to, but sometimes that's not a bad thing, because now I have time to reflect and to see what the next message I want to share is, the next story I want to tell. And sometimes I'm just not ready to share the story just yet, and sometimes taking a bit of a pause is a good thing, because like we've seen from other times, that sometimes waiting just a little bit gives the story a little bit more time to air, and with a different point of view, just you never know.
yeah.
But it's hard to say, because I like writing, I love recording, and
Hmm.
releasing an album is a really awesome experience, because you get to really share an entire body of work at once with people, which is really incredible. Um, it's hard to say, because I do want to get out, and I hope to be better enough to get out and tour and do more live performances. And it's hard to do both of those things at the very same time. But I just feel, because I haven't gone out and done live shows in almost 7 months, I
Mm.
really would love to get in front of my audience and connect with my fans and my listeners and my audience, and just really be able to experience that again, because it's been so long. So
Yeah,
I'm somewhere in between the two. I love to
yeah.
record. I love being in the studio. It is seriously my happy place. So I kind of want to do both, I guess, but I guess that's not a valid answer, right? You have to
No,
pick one. But
it, it's one of those things where it's whatever you want it to be. It's like the intent of doing a full project, but you know, it, there's no right answer. Like it's not a quiz. It's
I know.
it's good.
No, I hear what you're saying, and you're right. There isn't a right answer unless you're based on a formula. But I do think that when the right set of songs come along,
Hmm.
they'll be perfect for the next body of work, and they'll
Yeah,
all fit perfectly together, and it'll be the right time to release all the songs together.
for sure. 100% agreed. It'll just naturally come together. You'll
A-
know when it happens.
Absolutely.
So, uh, kind of taking a step outside of music, like when you need to take time for yourself, what are some of your hobbies? What do you do outside of music, you know, just to kind of decompress?
Well, I love to spend time with my family. I love to spend time with my daughter. I love to cook. I love to eat. I think we already talked about how much I love to eat before. I love to eat. I like to travel. I like to go for walks. I just like to do a lot of things. I'm a very simple person. I love my family, and I'm a very I love being around the people I love, and I love eating and feeding people. So that's usually what I like to do. But I do like to travel. I like to experience new experiences. I like to see new places. I know a lot of people like to do that, and that's great. I love to watch my daughter do everything she's doing. You know, she does a lot of sports and she does a lot of arts. So I love to go and support her, and that makes me really happy, because when I see her succeeding and doing all of these incredible achievements, it makes me see that literally anything is possible.
For sure, for sure. 100%.
Yeah, and I love
Awesome.
to meet people.
Nice. Nice. Um, so I don't want to keep you too much longer here, because it is a little bit later by you than it is me. What's one thing that we like to do on Live and Amplified is we like to pass on knowledge to younger musicians out there. And I know we've kind of covered most of this earlier, but I just kind of want to reiterate this. What's one piece of advice you have for the young musicians out there?
Um, it might be two.
Okay.
Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. So be yourself. Don't look at what other people are doing. Do what's right for you. You know, I know a lot of young artists try to emulate other people's sounds and be like other people that have already achieved success. I think it's really important just to be you and to be happy with you, because somebody out there is listening to you and thinking that you're awesome.
Hmm.
There's
Awesome.
only there's only one of you. Be you, and that will resonate with people.
For sure. For sure. I think that's great advice. I think it perfect. That's what I wanted to hear. That's the kind of stuff I look for when I ask that question. So,
You know, it's a
um,
story
good.
though. I think we all have tendencies at some point to hear somebody and say, "Oh, I want to be like that." But if you think about it, that person's already exists. Just be you. Somebody will appreciate your sound and your uniqueness.
Yeah, 100% agreed. Um, for anybody that wants to listen to your music, that wants to support you as you continue to release music, want to interact with you on social, check out any shows that you may have coming up here, where's the best place that they can find you, interact with you? Where's the best place to find you?
Well, you can go to my website, which is RobbieHarte.com. That's RobbieHarte.com. There will be links to my streaming and all my socials. Or you can find me on social media at Robbie Harte Official. Make sure you connect with me and let me know which of my songs connected with you and which one you loved and why. I'd love to hear from you. And I'll be playing at the ISSA Awards in August in Atlanta. So if you're in the Atlanta area, make sure you stop by at the after party for the ISSA. I'll be performing a live acoustic set, and I would love to see you there.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Robbie Harte, it's been an absolute blast chatting with you. I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and chat with us. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Please go listen to all the music Robbie has out in the ether, in the Spotify's and all that fun stuff. It'd be really appreciative. And once again, thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we will catch you all later.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time chatting.
So, all right.